I'm joined on the Crispin Flintoff show by Pamela Fitzpatrick. How you doing, Pamela?
I'm good, Crispin. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm safe. Back from Egypt.
I know. I was worried about you. I was pleased to see you back. But
I've got a bit of a tan and I've got a bit of trauma, but that's all right. Now now while I was away, there was a story that was blown up out of of a registration of a party that you had registered, and because you're linked to the Peace and Justice Project as well as other things, people were saying, "Well, this is the new party." Is it? Is it this new party? Can you tell us what it is?
no, no, Crispin, it's not. So, alongside what's happened sort of nationally and what I've been working on to get a national party, I've obviously still been active in Harrow. And you know, we've got a huge group of activists that are really committed in Harrow. You've been down to see us. And for some time, we've been saying we need to register a local party, but we have held off for some time, waiting for the national party to happen. But by January this year, people were saying we really need to register a local party for the local elections next year. So we spent time thinking about what the name should be, and people came up. They didn't want to be called Harrow Community Independence because, quite rightly, as they pointed out, if you're a party, you're not an independent anymore. You are part of a party and you've got a programme, and that's what we want, a clear socialist programme. We don't want just people who can't get elected as a Labour councillor to join us, or people who think, yes, I just want to stand and be independent. So we're very clearly socialists. And we came up with the name, well, I didn't, but local people came up with the name Arise. And we submitted our application in February, so it was a long time ago. And some people seem to think that you just ring up the commission and then you're registered the same day. Well, it doesn't happen like that. And we had the Electoral Commission coming back and forward to us, which I must admit, as no other kind of these community independents seem to be registered really quickly. I'd started to think of the conspiracy, or there must be somebody from the Labour Party working there. But anyway, we were finally registered officially on the Friday the 13th of June, which I hope is not unlucky for us. But it coincided with an event that Jeremy had done the following day. So yeah, that's where it came from. So unfortunately, Squawk Box ran a story, put two and two together and came out with five. And what they should have done, obviously, is to ring me. They've got my number. They could have checked with me. My name's on the application. But instead, they put out a story. I was on various things that day, so I didn't actually see the story till about 10 o'clock at night. And I did message Squawkbox to say this is inaccurate, but unfortunately remained up until the next day when they put a kind of slightly different story up. So yes, it's really unfortunate because people's hopes raised, and it's still positive. I don't want people to be disappointed. We've got this wonderful now party in Harrow.
There's two things here. One is that a month ago, Jeremy Corbyn spoke at a meeting where he suggested that a party should be formed before the local elections next June.
Mm.
So it's a whole month has gone by without anything happening, which I don't know. I don't want to make a judgment on that, but the longer that happens, the more likely it is that people will jump to conclusions that anyone doing anything is setting up a party. So, and what you just said about your local activists saying we need to do this now, we can't really keep waiting for much longer if we are going to have a party that will stand in the local elections next year. I mean, the time's is ticking, isn't it? What's your view? I mean, it's got to be soon, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you really need about a year's run-in to establish a brand, to get campaigning, to select candidates and everything. You can't really do it at the last minute. So it is desperately needed. And I know people are so frustrated, and that's why people have clung to anything, in the hope that something is coming. I mean, of course, it's got to be done right, and it does take time. And you know that I've been working with the collective for, oh goodness, a year and a half now to try to bring groups on from the left together and adopt a kind of bottom up approach. So taking all these kind of informal groups like in Harrow, in Liverpool, in different areas, and also some established parties, like Tusk and things, and try to get consensus. But yes, it is frustrating because Collective is not the only group, I suppose, that is trying to do that. So, Jeremy will want to bring everybody together. I do think Jeremy is the only person who can unite the left and bring people together for that to happen. Now, some people I know think we don't need to bother with the locals. It's just the parliament that counts, and so they have that attitude that we should be delaying. We don't need a party now, and in terms of a national party, all we need to do is building communities. Well, people like me have been building in our communities for decades. We need some structure so that resources are shared equally, because otherwise you can't expect a community where there isn't any kind of real leadership at the moment, or where they don't have money and people can't afford to chip in to rent a hall or print leaflets, or even take the time out to go to an event. So we need that structure in place, and it needs to happen very soon.
Yeah, I mean the other thing is if you stand in local elections, you can pick up the data from the electoral register earlier and
Yeah,
and have more time to prepare for the general election. If you don't do that, then
yeah,
it's also an incentive to go out and walk around and knock on doors. Um,
yeah,
Now the other thing about this is, I can imagine the clamour for this new party is so great that if something was announced where they said we will be electing a new leader, for example, in a month or 2 months, but you must join within 4 weeks, there would be tens of thousands of people joining, if not hundreds of thousands of people joining. Um, I can't see it. It's not that complicated, really. It just seems to me that there's a lot of negotiations behind the scenes that I just don't understand this kind of secretive behind the scenes thing, because it sounds like the kind of politics that Starmer and Blair and all those people we despise get involved in. We don't need the politics behind the scenes. We need to be out in the sun talking and arguing our case. I mean, a leadership election would be able to go all around the country, hustings, online, everyone talking about the issues we want to talk about, and we'd get some media, whatever it is, even if it's tiny, it'd be better than nothing. I can't really understand why this isn't happening now. I mean, what's your take on the is there a problem with a leadership issue? Is there a problem with a constitution? And is that what's holding it up?
well, we had a constitution ready to go back in January. But I think that perhaps some people who were not as far ahead as us, who still felt that we ought to be doing community organising rather than leadership, have maybe delayed the process, that have wanted to uh, yeah, have thought that a party is not needed. Now, anybody on the ground, I work in a law centre, I see the problems that people have, the absolute poverty, the racism, and everything else. You know, you can see it if you're on the ground that there is a need for a party now, basically. I don't disagree. I think that would be a good idea. I mean, certainly when we started with the collective, the idea was that it would be a temporary leadership, and that you would have then democratic elections to elect a leader. And that, Jeremy, as I said, is the person who can unify and bring people together. And that needs to happen. I think the problem is that maybe some other people think they should be the leader as well, and that can cause problems. So moving forward, we need to just get an announcement by Jeremy that the party is starting, and then we move forward to creation of democratic process. The problem is, as I said, that even in Harrow, we've had problems, registering. It's taken quite a long time. Now, maybe when Jeremy, if he does register, it'll go through quicker. But I can imagine if I've had problems, then, they'll be scrutinising anything that Jeremy does as well. So we do need to get on with it, I think. And, you've seen that there is an appetite for it, wherever these kind of rallies are held, they're really well attended. People are crying out for a new party. and we have to just get on with it. I'm as frustrated as anybody. As you know, I've been trying my best to get this organised for quite a long time, and I see the practical need for it. And also, I'm very much a person who thinks that actually getting local people elected in local councils is really important. You can't just think, we'll just do it and get an MP. Because if you've got good councillors, and admittedly, a lot of people have been let down by both Labour and Conservative councillors in the past, but a good councillor can get issues sorted out for constituents really easily, and then you build trust with people and they see that you're actually delivering. Whereas if you just turn up and you're an unknown brand and you say vote for me, of course you're going to get a handful of people who will get through into parliament. You'll get that, but that's not going to change the world, and that is what we need at the moment. We need radical change. And yeah, the problem is if you try to kind of include everybody, you get people pulling in different directions because they want different things. And what we need is a clear socialist programme, a radical programme. It's no good having a kind of replica of the Greens or Labour, because people have rejected those already. If they were doing well, we wouldn't have reform.
No, no, I need to ask you because that you mentioned the Greens. Now, I just thought, is there a reason some people are holding back on this? Is because there's this kind of Zach Polansky for the leader of the Greens, and people maybe are thinking, oh, we'll hedge our bets with Zach Polansky, and maybe we shouldn't have to go through registering a party, and we can all join the Greens. What would your feeling be on that line of joining the Greens? Would you be opposed to that? What's the issue with the Greens, do you think?
Yeah, for me, the Greens are not right, and people have to make up their own mind as to what they think is appropriate for them. And there are a lot of people, I think, who think like me. So for the Greens, they are a mixed bag, and there's some really good people in the Greens. I absolutely get that. But for example, a key policy is support for NATO. That there's other things in other parts of the country. It's quite right wing. It's more sort of countryside alliance types. And are we really saying that people are going to infiltrate the Greens and then change the party to something else? And look what happened with Jeremy, with people who were already in the party and wanted a socialist Labour Party. So the Greens haven't succeeded so far in attracting people to change things. And in some of the councils that they run, they're not running them in a socialist way. We talk about the bin men in Birmingham having cuts to their salaries. That's happened under Green councils as well. So for me, it's not the case. And I don't want to get into it, attacking the Greens, because it suits some people and that's fine. But there is still a big gap for people that is not being filled. And so I also think the Greens are not going to appeal in certain parts of the UK. They do in some, but not all. So we need something different.
Joining me on the show live from Leeds is Mothin Ali. Are you there?
Hi, Crispin.
Hiya. Look, thank you for agreeing to come on. Did you hear what Pamela Fitzpatrick was saying? Were you raging at it? What's your take on what she said about the Greens? I mean, those issues that she made. Would you like to comment on them?
To be honest with you, I don't think there was a lot of substance to that argument. What I heard was the Greens are not right without pointing out any specifics as to what the problem is. There was an issue around NATO. Now, one of the things I will say is the Greens are a very democratic party, and every member has equal weighting in their vote, whether they're leader or whether they're an ordinary member. And we have the ability to change policy directly. So we could, if we got organised enough, we could at the next conference put in a policy to say we want to withdraw from from NATO, but we need enough backing for that, and that's why I've always appealed to say that to people on the left is get involved with us, and we can actively change this party. Something that we're already doing. If you look at our last conference and you look at the genocide motion that we passed, and all that took was a handful of activists who were really motivated, really upset by what's going on in Gaza at the moment, And we pushed through a policy. We're the only national party to recognise what's going on in Gaza as a genocide, and we recommitted ourselves to BDS. And this was done by ordinary members, and that's the power that members have in the Green Party. I mean, one of the things that sometimes frustrates me is it's democratic. It's very democratic, and is because of that, it's hard to get things done. So we need to make sure that motions like this are taken to conference and they're clearly backed by enough members. So there are good people trying, and there are good people making a lot of changes. And the other thing that I will add is whether it's Zach or whether it's Adrian and Ellie that come in as the next leaders. Adrian might not be the best communicator in the world, but he was the one who wrote the last manifesto. In large part, he was the one who came out with the policy on wealth tax, and that's a hugely popular policy amongst many on the left. So we've got the right people, we've got the right infrastructure, and we've got we're in a good position to be able to really push this party forward and really make inroads and put a strong voice for the left.
Now you're standing for deputy leader. So can you tell us how many other people are standing? When's the election itself?
Yeah, so I'm one of the candidates. There's 5 candidates that have announced in total. We've got up till the end of this month for any other candidates to come forward and say that they want to stand.
Okay.
And the election itself will start on the 2nd of August. So voting will run for a month from the 2nd of August till the end of August, and then the announcement will be made on the 2nd of September, I think, on who's actually won. And
are a lot of people joining the Greens to vote specifically in that election? Is it helping to boost membership? Because there's a leadership election as well, isn't there? Is that the same time as the deputy?
Yeah, so there's a number of elections happening. So there's the leadership election, there's the deputy leadership elections, and then there's GPEX, which is our equivalent of Labour's NEC. So all those elections are happening at the same time. The leadership election, the deputy leadership election, has been something that's inspired a lot of people. I've been told personally by a number of people that they've joined so they can get involved with this specific election and vote for me or vote for Zach. But the official numbers on membership figures aren't going to be released right now. They're being held confidential because they don't want it to influence the leadership election itself.
Okay. Now look, another thing that Pamela mentioned, because this kind of contradicts what she said, is that you are a councillor in Leeds, and most people would associate the Greens with being southern sort of home counties, or more kind of what we'd associate with without being too rude, like hippie kind of towns like Brighton or Bristol, etc. I mean, Leeds doesn't seem to fall into that as a city. But the other thing I just want to show people, because I mean, this is incredible what you did last year when we had those riots. I'll just show a clip of what happened there. This is you intervening during that time.
Look, he's the only one stopping it.
Brother, leave him alone.
This is our neighbourhood. This is our neighbourhood.
Well, it's going to get worse than it.
Well, don't burn it then.
Who wanted it?
Who wanted it? Don't burn it.
Who's inside that house? You're going to be blamed for their deaths. Think before you act.
There's children in there.
There's families in there. Think before you act.
This is our neighbourhood.
That's right. Those cameras are recording each and every one of us. You have to be at your houses. We've got uncles who did this 10 years ago, and they got their whole life destroyed for doing one little silly thing. Use your brains. Don't get excited.
You've got to live here. This is your community. You can't treat it like this.
You're right. You're right. Yes, brother. That's enough. What else is there now? That's enough.
And that's very incredibly brave of what you did there. But also, it does show the conflict as well between these sort of far right people and we could kind of say that some of Reform are touching on that part of the political landscape, and what you're doing as a Green. I mean, how do you see the threat of Reform? I mean, how can the Greens take on those kind of people?
I think there's a few things that you mentioned there. Is Greens have traditionally been seen as a party that would appeal in the home counties. I think that argument would have worked 20 or 30 years ago. I don't think it is relevant anymore. The number of in 2024, the number of seats that we took were predominantly from Labour. You know, I took a seat from a Labour councillor who'd been serving for 17 years. And we're making more and more inroads into Labour heartlands, and hopefully the ward that I represent will turn Green in the next few years, because people are inspired by what we're doing. People are fed up of the two parties, the Labour and Conservatives. People are fed up of having the same sort of policies repeated just with a different colour tie, and people are fed up of that. And what we've also seen is a ward like mine, which is really deprived, and where you saw those riots taking place, I grew up a few streets away. You know, we're from these streets, we're from our communities, we're people who have grown up and we're part and parcel of the infrastructure here. But what we're seeing is where Greens are standing and where Greens are really active and offering hope, then we're not only getting Labour voters to switch, but we're inspiring new people to actually stand up and come out. I think we increased voter turnout by about 20%, and somewhere like Gipton and Hare Hills, that's an amazing result, because our typical turnout is about 18, 19, maximum 20, 21%. We increased turnout. We got a huge majority because people saw the message and they saw us actually coming out and caring about our communities. And I know you mentioned look like hippies, and I'll tell you a little bit about what my first appearance at a Green meeting in Leeds is. I teach permaculture, so I teach gardening. I teach people how to grow food and how to grow food growing systems in a sustainable way. I turned up at a Green Party meeting thinking I'd meet a bunch of tree hugging hippies, and what I found was that we're actually discussing problems that would really affect me. You know, they were looking at how to tackle poverty, how to tackle inequality, how to create a fairer system. And I was like, okay, this is a party that I don't just want to be a member of, but I want to be an active member of, and I want to actually represent. So, and you also asked a question about how are we going to tackle Reform? Exactly that. People aren't voting for Reform because they think Reform is great or Nigel Farage is great. People are voting for anyone right now because they think they've got no hope, and we've got to offer and we've got to give them hope. We've got to come out and say, okay, there is an alternative, and we've got true left-wing policies. We've got people at the very heart of our activism. This is one of the things that I always say is community is at the heart of our activism, and we've got to make sure that we spread our message and tell them that we're here, we're working in our communities, and we're going to build our communities up and build that community infrastructure, whether it's campaigning, whether it's activism, whether it's looking after each other. After those riots, we held this event called, I organised this event called City of Belonging. And we had over 250 people attend, from people from all kinds of backgrounds, Romani community, Bangladeshi, Pakistani, English people. We had people coming in from, people who'd never sit in the same room together. Because one of the things that happens in poor communities like this is people congregate around their own familiarities, and they stay within that, and they don't interact with each other. So what we did with the City of Belonging event was we had a rabbi speaking, a priest speaking, a pastor from the Romani community. I spoke. Natalie Bennett came up and she spoke, and we started a dialogue. and we started a conversation, and we started breaking down those barriers and how we get to know each other. And this is one of the things that we need to be doing. In when you have this divisive rhetoric from Reform and people like that, is we need to be making the counterbalances. Look how unified and how strong we can be when we're together. You know, when we're united as communities and we're not divided and we're not falling into these traps, we can really, really be powerful. And this is one of the things that I really believe in, you know, grassroots community organizing and building people up and building a capacity within areas and saying, okay, you've got the power to make change. Come on, let's go out and do it.
Well, look, you're very interesting, what you've said, and I'm sure lots of people are impressed by what you're doing, and I'm impressed by what you're doing as well. It'd be good to speak to you again sometime, but about how your campaign's going, and thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Crispin, for the opportunity, and anytime you want me, just get in touch. I'll be happy to come along.
Cheers. All right, thanks. Right, now look, I'm going to bring on Ben Timberley, who did very well last week while I was out in Egypt. Ben, what do you make of it? To me, it makes kind of sense in a way that, you know, if this new party isn't nothing's happening there, people would go to the Greens. I mean, Mothin Ali is saying stuff that, you know, about getting in there and changing the Greens, making it a radical party. What's your take on that?
It's interesting, and I do apologise if my voice is a bit husky. I'm quite unwell at the moment, so please forgive me on that. I think running your show took it out of me, Crispin. I think Mothin Ali, his passion, his enthusiasm, the hope that he has for change should be applauded. You know, I remember having all of those things, and I think you were the same, Crispin, and many of us were, when Momentum appeared, when Jeremy Corbyn appeared in 2015. That December, that year, I think all of us felt that hope for that change. And we pinned that hope on the Labour Party, expecting that a party that had been founded for one set of principles was going to, you know, live up to those principles. We quickly realised that was not the case, and that the people that were inside that party and the real power behind that organisation had absolutely no interest in fulfilling those principles. And unfortunately, I think we can see the same from other parties, possibly the Greens, in terms of where their actual direction goes. The biggest problem for the Greens being their association with NATO and their position on NATO. You can't have a pro-imperialist position with an organisation that is attempting to woo socialists and the British left into going into any given direction. You can't do that. That is a simple incompatibility. And I think the challenge that we're facing in this country is that there are very few platforms that are unadulterated in terms of having those, how should we say it, contradictory positions on things, where allegedly the organisation stands for one thing, but in reality it goes for the other. And I think it's very important as well that when you look at organisations in terms of, you know, saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that, who's behind them? Who is it that actually is funding them? Who is it that is pulling their strings? It's one of the reasons I set up Behind Labour, because I wanted to know who was pulling Labour's strings. And if you look at the Green Party and any other party, in terms of, you know, seeing who's pulling their strings, you'll find all kinds of dirt, of stuff that you think, how is this possible? How are they getting away with this? You know, how is this even remotely, you know, in the interest of the people that are supporting these organisations? And the problem we've got, we're setting up a new organisation, and we've seen this with Transform, with Collective, with Peace and Justice, and countless other organisations. There are always people with agendas that are not anything to do with the given or stated aims of those organisations. And the power and the influence of those people and those organisations behind the scenes to be able to subvert, redirect the nascent organisation, the new direction of it, the power that they have to redirect it and subvert that direction is huge. And unfortunately, most of these organizations aren't built in a way to withstand that. And most people aren't even aware that this is a process that is commonplace now.
Right.
Every time I speak on your show, Crispin, I try and educate people that this is how politics in the UK.
Can I just come in? Mothin Ali said that the policies can be changed at conference. Now, but in my mind, it's suppose a new party is built by people around Jeremy Corbyn that Pamela's talking about, but that party does not have the constitution that enables it to be democratic and a mass movement. You might as well join the Greens. Do you think? I mean, it's not because that party could be exactly the same as what you're talking about the Greens being. I mean, a new party, if it's going to stand out against the Greens, has to be more democratic, more mass movement than the Greens. That's got to by definition. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it, is there?
It's interesting that the more choices you give people in terms of directions they could go, it is human nature to take those choices to try and travel in new directions. And one of the problems with the left is we are very creative at coming up with new directions and new options and new choices rather than pursuing the ones that we've actually got. And the problem with this is if you have this continual, splitting, I'm going to use the word, but in terms of policy and in terms of direction and intent for what you create that organization for, you essentially dilute your audience. You dilute your direction of travel. You dilute your power in terms of how it is that you participate in your democracy. And the problem we've got there is you can't achieve anything. You need votes. You need money. You need bodies on the ground, people to deliver leaflets. What Pamela was saying earlier about the administration of an organization, totally support what she was saying. And again, this is where the left often falls down. Pardon me. You could go and join the Greens. You could go and join an existing party. But if you do that, you've got to know and understand that there will be all these different agendas pulling your organization in different directions. And that radicalism that is needed at the moment, where you have a direction, you have an agenda, you have a platform, you have a manifesto, and you stick to it. And I'm not talking about in one electoral term. I'm talking over a period of 3, 4, 5 electoral terms, up to 25 years. You have to stick to it for that period of time. And the problem is, if you have different leaders coming in every few years, you have different influxes of party members every few years with new ideas, new interpretations, everything gets lost. And without that almost railroad approach, with all of these new policies, this democracy, as people call it, it's not a democracy when it works like that. I think it's very counterproductive. And I think we're going to struggle to achieve that radical agenda that we need without an element of railroad approach.
Well, look, we come back again next week on this. And in fact, I'm at the point of calling out anyone blocking a new party because I'm tired of it. We've got to get going. I mean, if there's a clique of people just talking about this amongst themselves, I want to ask them what they're doing because they have to come out and say, I might not be popular. I'm sure they'll all snub me and they won't talk, but they need to be called out because I'm tired of messing around trying to be polite with people who aren't doing what they should be doing. Anyway, look, thank you, Ben. Look, you better rest. Have some strepsils or something. Yeah,
I've got one on the go.
Right. Okay. See you soon. Cheers.